Okay, this story is about a stoner who's in his early 20s, about 24, 25 years old, and he's a stoner, so he's a big stoner, so he's used to having, at least a bowl of weed a day. And this one Saturday rolls around. Saturday morning, he wakes up, he's ready to wake and bake. He rolls over out of his bed, he falls down, he grabs his pipe, he reaches to his bag of weed, he grabs his bag of weed, he pulls it up, and there's nothing left. Apparently he went wild that night and smoked it all, so he can't wake and bake. So he's like, well, shit, I'm going to scrape some resin. So he starts scraping resin, and he hits up the resin, but he's like, no, I need some marijuana, I need some weed. I'm in the need for weed. So he gets in his car, he drives to his dealer. His dealer's like, nah, man, I'm out of weed. I got some cocaine or LSD if you want some of that. And he's like, I don't touch that stuff, man. I need some weed. He's like, oh, go check the other guys around. They might have some. But I'm going to be out until at least Monday. And he's like, alright, dude. So he gets in his car. He drives to all the other little local, low-life pot sellers. Just guys that just sell a little bit of dime bag every now and then. They're all like, nah, man, I'm not going to have any for about a week or so. And, he's like, shit. So he goes to one less guy. And the guy's like, I'm out, man. He's like, everyone's out, dude. I went to everyone. He's like, did you go to that old lady that lives out in the woods up there on something street? Like, what? No, who is she? I've never heard of her. He's like, she's some old lady. She's like in her 70s. But a friend of mine said he bought some weed off of her. And a friend of mine that lives in Cali, he was down here visiting, and he heard about her when everyone was out. He drove up there and bought a bag of weed. And he's like, well, was it good? I don't know. I haven't talked to him ever since he bought it. He bought it and went back to Cali, and I haven't talked to him since. He's like, well, do you know where she lives? You think you like to get on there? He's like, yeah, it's something. He gives me the address. He's like, just go up and knock on the door and just flat out ask her. She's old, like she's gonna fight you. He's like, well, I'm desperate, so alright, I'm gonna do it. So he gets in his car and he drives all the way out in these woods to this old shack of a house out in the middle of the woods. He knocks on the door, and this old lady says, who's out there? And he says, my name's Daniel. I'm here to see if you can sell me a bag of weed. And she goes, a bag of weed? And she opens the door and she's got a shotgun and she's like, come on in, young man. And he's like, okay. He walks in and she's like, wipe your feet. And he looks and there's a dead animal and she has to wipe his feet on this dead animal, so he slowly does it and he walks in. He's like, a friend of mine told me that you have weed that you could sell. She's like, I may have weed. How much do you want? And he goes, well, it depends how much you have. And she goes, well, tell me how much you're planning on getting. And he goes, well, I was really planning on getting about, a 50 bag. And she's like, $50. And he's like, really? And she's like, yeah. He goes, can I see the weed? And she shows him this big bag of weed. And he's like, he just immediately, without saying anything, hands her a $50 bill. She hands him the bag of the weed and she says, enjoy it. It's the best weed I got. And he's like, he sniffs it and he goes, I will, and laughs. He's like, oh yeah, I'll enjoy this. With a big smiley face. Laughing. He walks out, he gets in his car, he starts rolling up a joint because he wants to bake while he's in the car. And he puts it in his mouth, and right before he strikes the lighter, he sees a police officer in his car. And he drops the joint down into his lap. He puts it under his leg. He puts the lighter down, and he pushes the bag of weed under his jacket. And he just slowly drives by, and he's like, sure, that was close. That's why you don't smoke in the car. Never again am I going to do that. So he gets back home. He puts his weed up. He's got the joint wrapped, ready to smoke. He goes, he sits down. He's like, I'm going to bake to a movie today. So he's looking through the movies. He turns on a Cheech and Chong film. He grabs his bag of weed, instead of having a bag of popcorn, he's got his bag of weed, and he's got his joint that he rolled in the car ready to smoke. So he sits down, he lights the joint, he's having a good time. 30 minutes pass, he's hitting out of this joint, he's hitting bowls, he's going wild, he's hit about 5 bowls, a full joint, and he's rolling another joint. And once he gets this joint rolled, out of nowhere, instantly he snaps into like a video game world full of these evil creatures that look like, kind of like the dogs on Nazi zombies. And he's like, whoa, what the hell? He's like in this evil world. And he's like, what is this? And, he's walking around. He's like, where am I? Am I tripping? What is this? What's going on? And then he hears this voice that says, you know, the weed that you smoked has been cursed from an old lady that knows witchcraft and blah blah blah. And you know, you have until your buzz wears off to survive this world, and if you die, you die. And he's like, you know, he's tripping balls, he's scared, he doesn't know what to do. So he starts walking, and he sees this creature, dog creature thing charging at him, and he takes off running, and the dog tackles him down and bites his leg, and his leg is bleeding. And the dog goes up towards his face, and he grabs the dog by the neck, and he's holding it back, and he grabs a rock that's next to him and hits it outside the head and beats it to death. And now he's limping because his leg is gushing blood. He's scared to death. He's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. You know, I'm bleeding. I'm in this weird world of weed, and you know, I'm scared to death. And you know, buzzes, you know, don't last that long. They last like maybe 30 minutes to an hour, I'd say, for me, because I've done it so much, and you know, my immune system is building up to it. So all I gotta do is last 30 minutes, and then he hears a voice saying, 1 minute in real life is an hour in this world. So, you know, he's like, oh my god, you know, there's no way I can do this. So, you know, he picks up the rock, that's the only weapon he's got, and he takes his shirt off, and he rips it, and he ties it around his leg where he's bleeding. He starts limping, and he sees this giant. It's like a giant, you know, like a big giant creature. And the giant's staring there, and he takes off chasing him. He takes off running, like limping and running as fast as he can, and he falls into this ditch, and the giant can't find him anymore. And he's sitting in this ditch, you know, he's scared to death, and he's like, you know, there's got to be a way out of it. You know, I don't know what to do. And, you know, now he's like scared to death. You know, he doesn't know how to get out. You know, he's really scared. He doesn't think he can survive this whole world because there's all kinds of evil creatures in here. And, you know, he's so scared and he's tripping and he doesn't know how to get out of it. And, you know, so he takes off running and he's like, you know what? My best bet is to find a big tall tree, climb up to the top of that tree and stay up there. So he finds this tall tree and he climbs up halfway up to the top of the tree and he's sitting up there holding onto the tree and he's going to try to wait out the time. And then all of a sudden the tree, two eyes open on the tree and the tree, an arm comes up from the tree and it grabs him and it just throws him and he's flying in the air. He hits the ground, he's tumbling and everything. He breaks his left arm, his left leg snaps. He's laying there, he's got a broken arm, broken leg. He can't walk now. He knows his leg is broken because the bone from his left leg is sticking out of his skin and his left arm is completely dislocated. So he's crawling on his right side now. He's like hurt really bad. He crawls up, he sees his TV remote and his pipe, and he sees that joint that he wrote that he didn't get to smoke. So he's like, maybe there's something to do with this area that I could get back to my living room and, you know, get out of this buzz. And he crawls over there and he picks it up and stuff. And he's like, you know, something, maybe I can dig a hole here. And he starts digging with his right hand as much as he can. And he's like, you know, he can't do anything. And, you know, maybe 1 hour has passed by and he's suffering and he can't survive. And he sees a dog come up and the dog's like biting on his broken leg. And he's like, you know, he just gives up. He goes ahead and lets the dog kill him. And the dog goes up and bites his neck and kills him. And then he wakes up and he's in this little white box. And then he hears a voice say, you died in the world of you know, the world of witchcraft that you was put in, and now instead of going to, you know, heaven or hell or anything like that, you're going to spend the rest of your life in this little tiny white room. And he's stuck in this little white room, a little bit bigger than him, kind of like a coffin. He can't move, but he knows what's going on, and he's stuck in this room for the rest of his life. And he starts screaming no, and then it cuts back to his living room, his bag of weed sitting there, his joint and his pipe. And one of his friends come over and he's like, you there? And his friend searches the house and doesn't see anything. And his friend sits down, he's like Cheech and Chong. Apparently he's been baking, he's probably, you know, out tripping somewhere. So he sits down, he's like, whoa, it's like he left a joint for me. He picks the joint up, he puts it in his mouth and he strikes it. And when he burns the tip end of it and takes a hit, he sits back, blows out and goes, oh yeah, time for a good time. Little does he know, and that's the end of the story.